Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Amazon Sunset and I'm going to be sipping on a little Moscato. If you enjoy this video, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting, let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, deep yellow, fluorescent orange, violet purple, green oxide, and Mars black. And of course you can switch up those colors if you like, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have 3 brushes. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush. I have a number 7 round brush, and I have a number 1 round brush. And I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. Of course, you can switch those up too if you like. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you through your painting process. One of them is a link where you could purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the large canvas to the fancy palette and the paints and the brushes and all that good stuff. So that's in there. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting, so you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we are painting the sky. We're going to be using our big bristle brush, and the colors that I'm using are white, yellow, orange, and purple. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to be applying it with a left to right brush stroke. I'm going to have it the lightest at the top of my sky and the darkest at the bottom of my sky. I'm going to bring my sky down about 2/3 of the way. So how to figure out where 2/3 of the way is, you can eyeball where your halfway mark is. Then you go halfway between there and the bottom of your canvas. That'll give you about 1/4, and it's somewhere in the middle of that. So once you find your 1/3 up or 2/3 down, you can take your large brush, just put a little bit of white and yellow on it at the same time. Just make yourself a little mark. Then I'm going to use my brush as a measuring tool, so I don't have to go through the same exercise on the other side. And I'm going to make myself a mark at about the same height. I'm just going to leave those 2 marks there as a visual stopping point as I'm working on my sky. Then I'm going to pick up more yellow and white, and I'm going to start my sky by using a left to right brush stroke. I'm going to have the top of my sky the lightest, and then as I come down towards my horizon, I will have that a little bit darker. And I'm just using a long left to right, almost kind of a crisscross type stroke. You could go straight across if you wanted to. Whatever method you feel is getting your paint on there the best is great. I'm going for kind of a nice gradual gradient as I come down my sky. I'm going to start introducing a little bit of the orange at this point. So I have white, yellow, and orange on my brush. And this is going to start to get those sunset colors starting to really appear. So I brought that yellow and white maybe, I don't know, 1/4 of the way down my canvas, and now I'm starting to introduce the darker of the colors. So I brought some of that orange in. My next time I go to pick up paint, I'm just going to pick up yellow and orange without washing my brush. So you'll start to see my sky is going to get darker and darker as it comes down. And in a second, I'm going to start introducing my purple too. So I'm really, when I put the next color on my brush, I do find myself backing up into a previous section. That way I can get these colors to really blend well together, make it look like they really belong together in the sky. And you can see I just kind of keep going back and forth until I feel like I've got that color in the area that I want. Now I'm picking up a little bit of my purple and my orange to get this to start to go a little bit darker as it's hitting that horizon line. And you can get yours to go as dark as you want or as light as you want. I might introduce a little bit more white into it to just make it into my visual preference, but I'm just attempting to get this purple and orange on here first, see if I can get it to nicely blend in. I am picking up a tiny bit of white just to give it a little bit smoother of an effect, maybe to look like there's some soft clouds maybe drifting by, or that haze from the hot summer day is just kind of settling at the bottom of that horizon. So feel free to make it whatever intensity you want. I think I actually want a little bit more purple in here, so it turns more of like that bluish kind of color, or I don't know, a cooler kind of purpley tone to it. And then once you feel like you've got your sky in the intensity that you want, we are going to be using the same brush for the next step. So you can just kind of keep fiddling with this until you get those tones where you want, and then you're gonna wash and dry. Let me just make sure I bring this far enough down. Wash and dry this big brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're painting our water. So we're gonna be using our large brush, and we're gonna be doing a similar thing that we did on the sky, only in reverse. And we're also gonna put an extra little bit of a highlight at the top of the water. So the water, in essence, if you reversed it, is gonna be dark at the top and light at the bottom. However, I'm gonna put a little highlight at the top of my water just to make sure that I have a nice separation between my sky and where my land is going to be and everything. Plus, the sun would do that. As it's setting, it would put a little bit of a highlight right at the top. So what I'm going to do is I am going to start with just a little bit of yellow and white on my brush to put my horizon line of my water on here. And I'm not terribly concerned about it being 100% perfectly straight because we do have some land pieces that we're going to be putting on, especially on this left hand side. So if you can concentrate on just getting that right hand side kind of straight, that would be great. So I'm going to find the spot of my canvas down below, the tallest spot that is unpainted, or the highest spot. So for me, that's right about here, and I'll make myself a little bit of a mark. Then I'm going to use my brush as a measuring tool to see where that mark is, go over to the right hand side and make myself a mark at the same height. Because your line will have shifted, you will have brought some of, it might have merged just a little bit. I'm gonna just double check this over here because that's right. And then you can do the same thing on the left hand side. So I'll come over here to the left hand side. That one, it just must have skewed a little bit while I was painting. So I'm going to go ahead and connect these two. I'm keeping my eye on the prize, which is my next marker, which is going to be this center marker in through here. I need a little bit more paint on my brush. And if you're going through wet paint right now, it's okay. They're all going to eventually merge together anyways, or look like they belong together anyways. So that totally works. And then I just kind of get it to blend in a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring it, that center dot over to this left-hand side over here. And then once I've got my horizon line on here, I'm just going to concentrate on going left to right with my brush stroke. I know that I want the bottom to be the lightest. So I'm actually going to go ahead and start there right now. So I'm going to put yellow and white on my brush, and I'm going to work from the bottom up. So just yellow and white. And I know that this is going to go faster for me starting at the bottom because that's the order that I did it at the top. So it'll make more sense to me for my brain to do it the same way that I did it at the top. And I know I have less of a space here than I did at the top, so I'm going to transition into the darker colors much quicker than I did for the sky. So right now I'm picking up orange and yellow. And then I'm going to just get these two colors to intermingle, and I'm doing that left to right. I'm going to get this water to look a little bit more messy or more ripply than the sky itself. So I'm going to continue to use that left to right brush stroke, but almost in a streaky kind of way, so I can have a little bit more of the ripples represented. We are going to have a big reflection over here on the left hand side, so don't feel the need to make it exactly perfect, but if you used a lot of purple over here, you're going to want to use a lot of purple in your water over here. So think of it as the water is reflecting what the sky is doing. So if you have a lot of orange or purple on one side, that's the side that you're going to want to emulate the purples and the oranges on your canvas too, or on the water. And I'm just going to kind of continue going until I feel like I have a good representation of what's happening in the sky. I want to put some of my purples in through here, make sure that that represents really nicely what's going on in the sky. And once you've got this step done, let's see, what are we going to do for the next step? We are going to use our medium brush for the next step. So you can put this large brush away. Let me just make sure, oh yeah, there we go. Making sure I've got similar colors down in that water. So you can put the large brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're painting our distant land. I'm gonna be using my medium brush. The colors that I'm using are black, purple, and white. And I really just want this to look muted and off in the distance. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to be having it a little bit lighter. It's going to be on the horizon line over here. It's going to be a little bit lighter on the left hand side and a little bit darker as it goes to the right hand side. I'm going to be using my medium brush. But before you start this step, I do encourage you to make sure that your canvas is dry. It'll make your process a little bit easier. So, you know, if it's not already dry, you can just take a little extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can blow on it, which might take you a little bit longer than you expect. Or you could just whip out a blow dryer and blow dry it. That was my way I dried mine. But if yours is already dry, then excellent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put black, purple, and white on my brush at the same time. I'm not pre-mixing anything. I just want to have those three colors on my brush at the same time. I'm going to find where my center area is, and I'm going to come to the right, maybe about half of an inch or an inch. And then I'm just going to draw myself kind of a line right at that horizon with those three colors on my brush at the same time. So I'm just going right along the horizon, and even if you run out of paint like I am, you can just reload along the way and just kind of get yourself enough paint on there. And then once you've got that line, now all I'm going to do is make myself a series of kind of polka dots to create the illusion of distant land. So I'm going to have mine, again, a little bit darker on the right hand side. So I'm just really doing these polka dots, and because I've got these three colors on my brush at the same time, it's providing me with a good assortment of light spots and dark spots. I want it to go a little bit lighter as I go to the left hand side. So I'm going to be using more white and maybe a little bit more purple as I go. You can use polka dots. I guess I'm using a little bit of almost like a swirly motion too, but whatever brush stroke works for you is fine by me. And you can see I've just got it, you know, in varying heights, in varying darknesses, and I want it to look like it's really just kind of far off in the distance. So if you want to, you can almost soften the top edge of it by maybe blending it into that sky a little bit. So if you want it to look even farther away, you can just take that brush and just blend it into the sky as it is. It almost like disappears into the sky. But again, I'm making my right hand side just a little bit darker, so I just added a touch more black on my brush. And then we are going to be using, let's see, what are we going to use for our next step? Let's use this same brush for the next step. No, I'm taking that back. We're going to use our large brush for the next step. So once you've got your distant land in here, you can put this medium brush away in your water cup, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're painting the front land, the land that's closest to us. We're gonna be using our large brush, and the colors that we're gonna be using are black and green. We will be using our tiny brush at the end of this step, but we're gonna start with the big brush. So I'm gonna start with just black paint on my brush, and I want my bristles to kind of be in control. So what I'm gonna do with my brush is I'm gonna put a good amount of black on it and then squish my brush on my palette, and that brings my bristles together and it helps me to control what I'm going to be doing, because I kind of want to have almost a clean line at the bottom of this. I'm going to have the edge of this front land right here, so I am just going to kind of make myself a little bit of a marker, something like that, that comes into my water, maybe about 1/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to do a continual line going over here. It does not have to be straight. This is land. It can have some movement to it. So I'm just going to kind of take my brush and go something like that. And then I'm just going to kind of get this colored in here. And you don't have to do any fancy brush stroke here. I'm just kind of dabbing it a little bit so it has a nice textured look to it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting in the foliage and the treetops. But what I want to make sure that I do is keep a lot of peekaboo spots so you can see the sun setting colors going down. So I'm going to give myself kind of a goal or a height where I want this mass of trees to be. So I'm going to actually come, I would say maybe, I don't know, maybe 1/3 of the way down my canvas. That's about as tall as I'm going to make them. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of use this dabbing type technique to get the mid area or the mid section of these trees on in through here. So something like this. And you can see I'm kind of using a carefree dotting type technique until I get to the tops, which the real tippy tops, because I want there to look like there's a little bit of detail to it other than just taking my brush and smushing it there. So I'm again going to squish my brush in my palette on the side. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to scatter some treetops throughout a little bit higher than that mass that I just did. So I'm going to sit here and I'm going to just kind of add these little almost branch type formations that I'm doing with the tip of my brush. And I'm thinking, okay, well maybe I'm gonna have some tree trunks here in a minute too, so you can certainly know that's going to help to create some additional information in through here. Maybe I've got some little ones over here that are a little bit further off in the distance. I went a little bit higher than I thought I was going to, so that's okay. That happens. Some of these trees are going to be a little bit taller than others. And then when you feel that you've got enough, then just kind of start filling in those gaps a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my large brush and pick up some green paint. Without washing it, I just picked up some green paint and I'm going to dab in some green areas. So I don't need to cover the whole thing. This green will get darker as it dries. So what this is doing, it's just adding some authenticity to this and giving it a little bit more texture and a little bit more dimension, making it look like you've got some areas where there's a little bit of light hitting some of these trees. And then once you've got that on there, and no, it will dry darker too. So if you feel like you've done too much, just know it'll probably dry a little bit darker before it's done. And then I'm going to take my little brush and I'm going to add a touch of black paint, and I'm just going to add the illusion of tree trunks throughout the area. So wherever you feel that you want a little tree trunk, or you feel like you've got a nice tall tree in through here, you can go right ahead and just add little sticks. You could even bring some down in through here if you feel like you've got a nice spot that would work. I feel like I'm going to put some over in through here, and they don't have to be straight up. You definitely want to give them some, you know, movement, some curve to them, or, you know, think of it like branches forking out. And if you've done one that you, like me, like I feel like I did that one too big, so I'm just going to add more of a tree top on top of it. And you can have as much fun as you want going through here with little branches. And then we are going to be using our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got your land in here, you can wash and dry your medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're painting the outline for our boat. I'm gonna be using my medium brush, and I'm gonna be using just black paint. So this boat is a wood boat that has a top to it, and obviously the regular boat part that you can sit in. So we're gonna be doing a piece on the top and the bottom. This was inspired by a boat that I actually rode on down the Amazon during this sunset. So it was a really cool, rickety old boat. I can't say that I felt the safest on it, but it didn't leak, so we're good. So we're gonna give a nice, loose, painterly representation of that boat. So I'm gonna put some black paint on my brush. On the left-hand side, top left-hand side, I'm going to make myself a mark about 1/4 of the way down my canvas. On the right-hand side, I'm going to be maybe about a little bit less than this. So a little bit higher than this, maybe about 1 inch higher than this over on the right-hand side, or so. It doesn't have to be terribly exact, somewhere about there. So a little bit less than 1/2 inch, or 1/4 of a way. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself, I'm going to come down from here maybe about 1.5 inches, and then in maybe about 1.5 inches, make myself another little marker. And then I'm going to make one more dot, and this one is going to be, if this is the center of my canvas, I'm going to come to the left maybe about 2 or 3 inches and come down. So this dot is going to be higher than this one. So it's right about here is where my 4th dot is going to go. And you can probably guess by now we're ready to connect the dots. So I'm going to take my medium brush black paint, and I'm just going to connect this one to here. And if your paint isn't nice and fluid and isn't, you know, it kind of stops halfway, you can always add a touch of water to your black paint. That will help you to, sorry, I have to slow down when I'm doing straight lines. I have to stop talking so fast. The water will hold the moisture within your bristles, which gives you a longer, more continual stroke. So I'm keeping my eye on the prize, which is the other marker, and I am just gonna connect these two. And again, don't worry about imperfect lines, because this boat was definitely not perfect. And then I'm gonna connect these two, but it provided us with a very memorable evening, so that's all that matters. So once I've got that, there's a couple of wood pieces that are that poke out the edge. So what I'm going to do is in the center spot, I'm going to make myself a little bit of a rectangle that just comes off. You can color it in or not, doesn't matter at this point. I'm going to make another one about halfway from here to here, so somewhere in this vicinity, and they don't even have to be the same size as one another. You can make one skinnier than the other, one wider than the other. This side, we're gonna have a post coming down here. So I'm gonna have 2 more of these things within here. So wherever you want, maybe a couple inches away from here, you can make one. Again, there's no perfect math to this. I don't think there was math used when building this boat, so I don't think you need to use math while painting these little pieces of wood. I think this one's gonna go somewhere in through here. Before I put this pole on here, I am going to put the outline of the bottom part of the boat. So I'm going to find kind of the center part of my canvas, and I'm going to come maybe about an inch or two below my land. So this is about my center. I'm going to make a little bit of a marker in through here. And then I'm going to come down to the bottom left-hand corner of my canvas. I'm going to come in from the bottom left, maybe 4 or 5 inches, somewhere in this vicinity, make myself a little bit of a mark. And then over on the right-hand side, I'm coming in only about 3 inches or so on the right-hand side. So I have less space over here on the right than I do over here on the left because the boat was kind of at a little bit of an angle. There's a little scoopy part that comes up the front of the boat. So I'm going to make this maybe about 1/4 of an inch wide. And then I'm going to bring it down just a little bit like this. And then I will connect that to here with a little bit of a curve, something like that. And then I'm going to do on this side, I don't have as much of a curve because there's going to be like this little plank ladder thing that we'll be putting on. So if you don't get this side as curved as that side, don't worry about it. So something like this, and that little black mark I will disguise later. So something like this is going to give you a little bit of perspective, even if it's a little bit, I think I want it maybe a little less round than that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my pole on. So my pole is going to go somewhere between my boat and the edge of my canvas, and it's going to be maybe about an inch wide or 3/4 of an inch wide. So something like that. And then I'm going to bring the top of it is going to come in from here, maybe about an inch or so. So something like this. And you want the top to be about as wide as the bottom. And I'm just going to connect these two. So I've got mine at a little bit of an angle because that's a representation of this boat. Everything seemed to be at an angle on this boat. And then once I've got this on, I'm coloring this post in black. We're going to be using our large brush for the next step. So once you've got this all nice and painted in with black paint, this post that is, you can wash and dry your large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to be doing for the next step is we're doing the reflection of this front land. So I'm going to be using my large brush, and I'm going to be using black and green paint. But if you find as you're doing this that you run into any trouble, you can certainly pick up some of your original watercolors or the colors that are in your water, which would be your sunset colors. The idea here is you just don't need to paint the whole area in black. You want to have some areas of the water or the colors in the water showing within this reflection, so it almost looks like it's ripply, like the boat is pushing the water and there's some ripples involved. So I'm going to use a very little bit of paint on my brush, and at times I might pick up a little bit of actual water on my brush so I can get it to look nice and almost transparent or translucent in some areas. So I'm going to start with just a touch of black on my brush, hardly any. I don't need much at all. And I want this to have a similar kind of formation, and this is, you know, the thickest over here, so I'm going to have the most paint over here on the left-hand side, and I'm just almost using a dry brush type scrubbing brush stroke to get this on here, and I'm leaving little peekaboo spots of the lane or of the water underneath. As I get towards this edge, I just picked up a little bit of green also. And now I'm just going to kind of wiggle my brush left to right like this. Just wiggle it a little bit. Oh no, there's that song. So sorry, now I've lost concentration because I'm like, oh God, now I'm going to have to dance again. Let's go. So I'm just going left to right in this area. And again, you don't need much. You're just taking hardly any paint, using the corner of that brush as your friend. You can bump into your boat. You can even put it past your boat, or, you know, on the other side of the boat. If you feel like it would make sense to do so, feel free to do it. We're going to be painting our boat in a few minutes, so if you need to bump into, I'm going to bump into my boat so it doesn't look like I'm painting around it, which is why I'm doing this step before I actually paint my boat in. And I am, you know, going all the way up to my land, but I'm still leaving some little spots here and there so you can almost see the difference between the land versus the water. And I'm going to go ahead and keep bringing this all the way down this left-hand side and making sure that I keep a couple of little peekaboo spots of that water so it looks like it's rippled as opposed to me just having a full-on 100% reflection. Plus we've got little peekaboo spots within those trees as well, so that really adds to the story here. So right now I'm just picking up a little bit of water on my brush as I am coming down in through this area down here, because I want to be able to control the intensity of these strokes that I'm making. So I think I want it a little bit thicker in through here with the dark color. So just doing more of a broader stroke on the painting itself with my brush. And that's looking pretty good to me. Maybe a little bit more in through here. And you can keep playing with this. And again, if you feel like you've added too much, or you know you've lost some of the cool colors that the setting sun had, you know, shown on there, you can certainly bring back some of those colors. And then we're going to use this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your reflection in your water, you can wash and dry that large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting the base coat for the boat top and the main area of the boat. I'm going to be using my large brush, and I'm going to be using black paint. And I'm going to apologize right now for those of you who did not foresee this step coming. And if you spent a really long time on the top of your sky or on this part of your water, so sorry, you're going to be painting it with black right now. So I apologize if you didn't see this coming, but you know, I like to do the, instead of outlining these sections, I knew we would have a gradient behind it, which is why I chose to do this on top, because I wanted that gradient to look nice and natural, that we hadn't fiddled with it around an object. So that's why I chose to do it this way. So I'm sorry, but I'm sure you guys will get over it. But you maybe you were wise enough to foresee this coming, and you didn't spend too much time. But if you did, I'm so sorry. And then once I'm going to do this top area, and then I'm going to go ahead and paint the inside of my boat black as well. I'm just going a little bit slower around my edges so I don't go into my sky too much. And if you want, you can certainly water down your black a little bit just to give you smoother lines. Don't worry about if it turns out a little bit scratchy or if you don't have a good coverage on it, because we are going to be doing another step to this area as well as the bottom area. So we're not going for perfect coverage at this point. We're just going for a base coat. So I've got black paint. I'm going in through here. And then we are going to be using our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got the base coat on here, you can put your large brush away wherever you'd like to. You can take out your medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the first step of our setting sun. So I'm going to be using my medium brush, and I'm just using white paint. So how I'm going to do this, I really want my sun to glow. This is inspired by this boat ride I took was a sunset ride on the Amazon River, and this sun looked like it was just melting right into the earth. So I'm gonna do a loose interpretation of that, but I really want it to kind of be nice and powerful, so I want to have this nice light base underneath it. So I'm going to have mine maybe a couple of inches above the land, And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give myself a small circle, and then I'm going to almost blend it, let it fade out into the surrounding area. So how I do that, I'm going to make sure I don't have much paint on my brush. And while it's still kind of wet, it doesn't have to be super duper wet, but while it's still in that process, I'm going to give it just a little bit of kind of like a haze or a glow around it with the remnants that are on my brush. So something like that. And then I'm also going to bring a little bit of that lightness down just directly to the water. So I hardly have any paint on my brush right now. I'm just really almost illuminating that, that area of the sky. Then I'm going to pick up some more white, and I'm going to give myself my reflection that's going to go directly to the boat. So you come straight down from the sun to where it hits the water, and then you draw yourself kind of a diagonal line wherever you think you'd be sitting on that boat. So if I'm sitting in through here, I'm going to have it in this area like this. But you can certainly, you know, if you're going to be back farther in the boat, you can have it straighter, but I want mine at a little bit of an angle. So I'm going to draw myself a diagonal line right to the boat, and then I'm going to use that white paint once I've got my line, and I'm going to just go back and forth left to right and give myself these little almost like streaks going out into the neighboring water. So I don't want it to go too far out. I'm just going a little bit. My line is maybe about all told, maybe 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 of an inch wide. And it doesn't need to get skinnier or wider when it gets to the boat. This was, I think it was a little bit wider at, no, I want to say it was really kind of the same width. I'm not quite sure why that is. It must have been something with the, I don't know, the angle the boat was at or something, but the reflection seemed like it was the same width all the way from there to here in the left to right way. But you could certainly make yours thinner or thicker, whatever you feel is visually appealing is totally fine. And then once we've got this on, we are going to be using the same brush for the next step. So once you've got your first layer on here, you can wash and dry this medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting the awning frame pieces. So I'm going to be using my medium brush, and I'm going to be using black and white paint. These are going to be these little pieces that we have sticking out here, as well as this pole or post. So I'm going to be using black and white on my brush at the same time. I want these to look like they're in perspective, like they're coming closer to us. So I'm going to do this first, the center one first, and then each one is going to kind of go out at a little bit of an angle. It's going to be smaller at the part where it is the farthest away from us, which is going to be these points here, and it's going to get wider as it's coming towards us or towards the top of the canvas. So I'm going to take, this will be my first one, and I've got black and white on my brush at the same time. And if you want, you can certainly just kind of mark them out so you know where you're gonna have them. I'm gonna have this one kind of in through here. And again, just black and white is gonna be how I am gonna accomplish this, because I want it to look like it is just old weathered kind of wood. Maybe this one's gonna go somewhere in through here. And then I'm going to have this one, that's a lot of white, but that's okay. We'll work that out somewhere in through here. And again, you can certainly adjust yours accordingly if your painting is at a different angle or whatever than mine. So I think that's where I'm going to have them. And now I'm just taking that black and white on my brush and just going to kind of make these little streaks throughout it, so it just looks like it's old and it's, you know, had some time being weathered in the tropical type climate. And I'm not making it a solid color. Oops, I just painted into my sky a little bit. I'm not making it a solid color. I am giving that diverse look. A little bit of water. If you get something in your sky and you don't want it, just add a little, scrub it off with a little bit of water. And if you feel like you've made these too bright, feel free to just bring back some of that black. There's no rules as to how bright this needs to be. It is undercover, where it is on the inside of the boat, so it wouldn't, you know, theoretically it wouldn't be super bright, but if you have some brighter spots, that's totally fine. And then I'm going to do the same thing coming down here. If you want this to look like it's a square type pole, you can just put a line almost down the center, or maybe a little to the left of it, something like this. And then I'm going to lighten up the side that's on the sun. So I'll put more of that gray and white over on the side that the sun would be hitting. So something like this. And then we're going to use this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your, oh no, we're going to use a large brush. Sorry. We're going to switch brushes and use the large brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put your medium brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are painting the wood on the awning. So it's going to be these little panels in through here. I'm using my large brush, and I'm just using a little bit of orange and yellow. So I know that these are going to be nice and see-through, and they're going to provide me with a great textural element to the wood. So I'm going to put just a little bit of orange and a little bit of yellow on my brush at the same time. And I'm going to find myself the edge, something like this, and then I'm going to start pulling that paint. I don't want there to look like there's necessarily an outline on the edge. I do also know that this is going to get way darker when it dries. So if you do something you're like, oh my God, that's way too bright, just give it a minute. It will dry darker. And then worst case scenario, you can certainly just bring back a little bit of the black. We're also going to be doing a highlight with our smaller brush around the edge later. So if you do bump into your sky a little bit, don't be terribly concerned or nervous, because we're going to be adding a distinct highlight on that edge later. So don't, you know, I mean, if you get a lot on there, then, or if you go way past, if you go way outside the lines, that's a different story. But if you just get a little bit, then don't worry about it. And I'm just going to go right ahead and get these other two sections done. You might find that you want to use the medium brush to do this, but I really like the bristle brush because it's got these firmer bristles and they're a little bit more out of control, and I think that gives it a more organic kind of look to it. So you can certainly feel free to go with whatever you feel is visually appealing, but trust me when I say when it dries, it is definitely going to take on a little bit different of a look. This post, I'm going to kind of leave a little bit of a dark area around the where the post would meet the ceiling of here. So when you see that I leave that black, I'm doing that intentionally. It would, to me, it would cast a little bit of a shadow on that ceiling, just that little piece in through there. And then we're going to be switching back to our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry your medium brush. That wasn't exactly as I planned. There we go. And get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting the wood on our main boat piece here. So I'm going to be using my medium brush. I'm going to be using green, black, and white. And again, I'm steering this towards the boat that I rode, and it was kind of like almost a really weathered, like greenish gray type color. Maybe it had, you know, taken on some of the moisture, and I don't know, it looked a little green to me. So that's where we're going with our color. So I am going to take green paint and I'm going to mix it with a touch of black and a touch of white. So think of this as like a light grayish green kind of color. And you don't need it to be exactly as mine. If you want yours to be more on the gray side, feel free to, you know, add more black and white. If you want yours to look more like newer wood, you could certainly go with a more brown type look to it. But I'm going to be going somewhere in this vicinity. I'm going to bring this a little bit closer so you can kind of see the color in through there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a couple of strategic lines that are going to give me almost an outline for some certain pieces. So on the left-hand side, I'm going to give myself a little border around the edge of the boat, but I'm going to start up and through here. Now, when I'm doing this entire boat, I'm going to be doing really like a loose, sketchy type brush stroke. I'm not concerned about perfect lines because I want it to look old and weathered. So if some of my paint is thinner in some areas and thicker in others, that's great. So I have and we have a nice base coat right here. So when we start running out of paint, that's awesome. So I've got this, and I'm going to just kind of give myself a little bit of a molding piece in through here, something like that. There is they have these loading ladders that when you are getting onto this boat, they actually take the ladder and it's mobile. They just straddle it from the boat to the land, and then you just walk on it, and then they just rest it on the side of the boat. So that's what I'm going to outline next. So I'm going to give myself a horizontal line, maybe about an inch or so down from the top from here. I'm going to go like this. I'm going to bring it over to my molding over here. Then I'm going to bring it down in a similar kind of angle that I have to the edge of the boat, all the way down to the bottom of my canvas. So something like that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bump out a couple of pieces over past the edge of my boat. So I'm going to do something like this, and you'll see where I'm headed in a minute. Something like this. I don't know, you can put as many as you want. It would make sense if they got a little bit bigger as they got towards the bottom of the canvas, but if yours aren't, that's all right. And I'm only leaving maybe like a half of an inch to maybe a quarter of an inch between each one of these bumps. And then I'm going to bring this across like this, and I'm trying to keep them kind of horizontal with a little bit of space in between them. So something like this. We've got ourselves some lines in through here. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, now that I've got that shape in through there, I'm going to be making, there's a little, in this particular boat, there was a little ledge in through here. So I'm going to come about halfway down my boat. I'm going to make myself kind of a little line like this, and then it's going to come down over on this side like this. Now that I've got my kind of shapes in place, really what I'm going to do is give them a little bit of detail. So this was just a piece of weathered wood, so I'm using my remnants of that greenish color just to kind of get these streaks going in through here and along this side. But you can see I am allowing for some of that black paint to show through. Then I'm going to pick up a touch of white without washing my brush. This has a little bit of an edge. If I want it to look like a little bit of a piece of wood, I can put this little bit of a brighter edge in through here, and then just kind of blend this into the neighboring area. So what it makes it look like is that this is down in the shadow and this is up on the top. I can utilize a touch of that white to add a little bit of a highlight in through here as well. And whenever you're doing this, if you feel like you've put too much, you just pick up a little bit of that original green or the original base color that you've done. I'll put a little bit of a highlight over here. And I'm doing this kind of all in one step because I want to force myself to keep it on the messier, kind of more organic type side. I'm going to put some, these are the pieces that you kind of step on for this ladder. So I'm going to bring some of my green paint and just pull it a little bit in between here, but not all the way, just something like this to give we're giving it almost a natural kind of highlight and shadow without having to do much work. Picking up a little bit of white paint to highlight the kind of the right tip of this little piece. And if you leave a little bit on this back side without a highlight, that will naturally give it dimension. So I've got a little bit dimension on the back side, and I'll show you how to enhance that in a second too. Just getting this little, oops, that was a little bit of black on my brush, that's all right. So this little bit of a highlight on the edge. And again, I'm really not doing much. I'm just kind of reserving some of that, that back edge to say that there's a lip to this particular piece. And now I can almost redo the opposite in through here. So these are the little pieces in between. So if you can in your head say that these pieces right here, the pieces that we step on, and then the pieces in the middle are the pieces that are just the regular piece of wood. I'm adding a little bit of black and the green on my brush to go down this side here, which is going to show that this is the side of that piece of wood, something like that. And I can do the same thing. If I didn't get the right dimension or enough dimension on the back side of these, I can just put black with a little bit of that green on my brush, and that will give that effect in a really quick and easy to do kind of way. And that is all I'm going to do for my boat. If you feel like you needed a second layer in through here with black, feel free to do so, but this is the inside of the boat where your legs and stuff would go. And we are going to use our small brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry your small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the first layer of our rope. I'm going to use my small brush, and I'm just going to use some black paint. We'll put the colors on it later. This is just going to kind of get the party started here. So I'm going to have the a little loop for where the rope is tied to. I don't know, maybe somewhere about here. And you can have a big loop, you can have a small loop. Feel free to make your loop as large or as small as you'd like. And then I'm just going to have my rope kind of snaking around and just resting on this area in through here. So I think I'm going to have mine kind of going up like this, and maybe have a loop in through here. And I keep reloading my brush. I'm using a small brush, so I have to keep reloading it. And then maybe it comes and it's hanging over there, and maybe I'll bring it back over here, and then I think I'm going to have it hanging down in front or into the inside of the boat, something like this. And then we're going to use this small brush for the next step as well. So once you've got your first layer of your rope, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to be doing for the next step is I'm finishing my sun. I'm going to be using my small brush, and I'm going to be using white, yellow, and orange. And if you feel like you want to, you can certainly bring in some purple too, but I'm going to be just using my white, yellow, and orange. So I'm in essence going to do my sun, that white layer again. So it's nice and wet, and it adds that extra bit of vibrancy, but it's going to help me to blend the exterior colors as well. So I'm going to start with a little bit of white, and the best tip that I can tell you is never use a lot of paint. You can always add more, but this is a kind of a every time you pick up a little bit of paint and let it, as it's working, it'll dry, so you can keep adding more and have a lot of control over it. So I'm going to start with my white paint right in that center. I'm going to kind of get those edges a little bit moist with the paint, so something like that. Start that blending process out into the neighboring sky, even bringing it down a little bit like the melting sun that I witnessed. So something like that. Once you've got it out as far as you want, I'm going to pick up, actually I think I want to bring the white just a little bit down further into here before I start picking up my yellow. So just getting this glow to come down a little bit further, something like that. And now I'm going to pick up yellow paint. So yellow, I did not wash my brush, and I'm going to put the yellow paint around the sun like that and get it to blend into the edges of that bright sun. So something like this. So I'm going for a soft glow type effect. I want this yellow to be all on top of this vibrant area that I had coming and beaming down towards the land, something like this. I'm going to have the yellow go pretty far out. So maybe I'm almost going maybe about an inch or so out from the, or maybe like a half of an inch out from the left and the right. And I mean, you can have more fun with this than I'm having mine very organized and central, but you could certainly really make yours wider and have more clouds going by it and stuff. So feel free to make it as vibrant as you want. Now I'm going to add some orange to my brush without washing it. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm kind of overlapping that yellow area, and then I'm going to extend the orange even farther. So you overlap the area, and then you can extend it even farther. So I'm going right in front of some of this yellow too, and I'm going to get it to just blend into the neighboring sky. And if your paint dries too fast on you, you can touch your brush in your water a little bit and use a tiny bit of water to just loosen it up a little bit so you can keep moving it. There's also, you can use fluid medium that will help to keep that open time a little bit longer on your paint, but I like to just use maybe a little bit firmer of a brush. That helps to allow me to make the paint move as it's drying. And I'm going to add a little bit of this glow on top of my land as well. So I'm adding a little bit of orange, maybe a touch of white too, just to the tippy tops of this land in through here, just to say, oh yep, we're being illuminated by this beautiful setting sun. I think I'm going to have a little cloud going across it too. So it really looks like it's just melting into that, the earth. And of course, you can certainly just keep playing with this until you've got it the way that you want. The reflection is the same process. So I've got the white on there. I'm re-wetting that white with more white. So down that center with more white. And once I've got that on there, now I'm going to pick up yellow and I'm going to do the neighboring area with a little bit of yellow. These reflections in the water will look way more powerful the higher the contrast is from the colors that sit next to each other. So what I mean by that is you don't necessarily need to blend all of these colors way far out and have the white really wide and the yellow really wide. It will be more powerful if that white sits next to the yellow and the orange, because you will have a higher contrast in colors that way, and the white will pop out even more and making it glow even more. So I'm pulling the orange out into this neighboring water at the top, but where it's going to be near the white itself, it's going to be really near that white, and it's going to make it look, the white pop out even more. So I'm just going kind of left to right, getting this orange on here, overlapping it into that yellow a little bit. And then let's see, we are going to use the same brush for the next step. So once you've got your sun and its reflection all nice and painted, you can wash and dry this small brush. And hold on, let me just blend just a little bit more here, and then you can yeah, that's looking pretty good. Wash and dry the small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to do for the next step is I'm putting my final highlights everywhere I want to. So I'm going to use my small brush. I'm going to be using orange, yellow, and white. And this is going to include little highlights along the front edge of the boat, along the pole, along my rope, maybe some on the edge of my boat, maybe some on the edges of my trees. I'm just gonna, wherever I feel like I need to put a highlight, I'm gonna put a highlight. So I'm gonna start with, I'm using my small brush, I think I said that. I'm gonna start with white paint, and really where I'm gonna initially start is I'm adding a white, like an outline right along that, the edge of the wood. This is gonna make it really pop out and tell you that it is being illuminated by that by the sun, the setting sun. It's really cool because when you start to see or I don't want to say see in person, but visually kind of study the photographs that are created by these type of settings, and you start to see these little tiny details that help to make it look a little bit more realistic. It's kind of amazing. Your brain starts to see things in a really different way once you start looking for these tiny little details that are going to make it look that much more impactful. And of course, I was a little distracted while I was on this boat ride, listening to all the, the evening creatures, the caimans and the, whatever, the monkeys that are making their noises, that I didn't notice these details until I was looking at my photographs. So I just added a little bit of orange and yellow to my brush. So once I put that white highlight, I can go ahead and add a little bit of these other colors if I wanted to along those edges. I'm going to do the same thing over on this left edge of this post in through here. And again, it doesn't have to be one solid color. So I've got a combination of the orange, yellow, and white on my brush right now. And as I'm coming in through here, I'm noticing, oh, that's not bright enough. I'm not noticing it enough. So I just added a bit more white to my brush. So you can really get it to be as intense or as subtle as you want. I think I want to have some in through my trees, but I don't want it to overpower. So I'm going to just wipe my brush off on my paper towel. I'm picking up some of the orange because I know you'll be able to see the orange on top of or intermingled with here. So I just took a touch of the orange and I'm just sprinkling it in a couple of little areas here just to give you the impression or the illusion that that sun is in fact just casting its beautiful glow upon the stuff that's near it. So something like that. And you don't even have to go all the way to the left because the sun is over here. So that's going to give a better illusion right there. I'm loading my brush with orange, yellow, and white at the same time. I have all three colors to give myself an assortment of a highlight on top of this rope in through here. So something like this. And again, I'm just going to kind of do this little streaky type brush stroke. I think that this would be, under here, and this would be on top here. So again, just have some fun doing it. Maybe this piece of rope actually is laying on top of that one. So we've done that. Maybe this is on top of this one. And again, I have orange, yellow, and white on my brush. I'm not really pressing hard, but I am attempting to get some brighter spots and some darker spots, so it gives it a nice illusion here. And then my rope that you can hardly see in through here, once I add my highlight, you'll be able to see it now. And then let's see where else. I think I want a little bit of a glow on the front part of my boat. I just wiped my brush off. I'm picking up a little bit of orange. You can do orange and yellow without the white. It should be translucent or see-through. So you can take a little bit of that color, just a little bit, and almost just rub it onto the actual wood of the boat. And that's going to give you this beautiful sunset-kissed part of the woods. And you don't have to do the whole thing, just a little bit. Maybe I put a touch over of the yellow or something over in here. Well, that might be a little bit too yellow. We'll bring back some of the white on that and just have fun with it. I mean, it's all about just getting the illusion to happen. And once you've got all of your beautiful highlights on here, we have one tiny little step left to go, and it will be with this small brush. So you can just wash and dry this small brush. I think I want little highlights in through here too, I guess. You can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I'm going to use my small brush. I'm going to use black paint. I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I think I'm going right in the bottom left on this one. I sign mine with my initials, but you could certainly sign yours with your first name or the day or any other symbol or marking that you would like. It's your identifying mark. You do whatever you'd like on that step. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you painted yourself a very, I don't know, seductive sunset. And I hope you enjoyed the process, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.